She grinned. My ex messaged me. Maybe I made a mistake choosing you. I said, go for it. Days later, she was sobbing when she discovered the truth about his success. What started as an ordinary Tuesday evening in our Phoenix apartment became the moment I realized 3 years of what I thought was love had been built on quicksand. I was debugging security protocols for a client when Rachel burst through our front door with this triumphant expression I hadn't seen since she landed her marketing job. You'll never guess who reached out to me today, she announced, practically bouncing with excitement as she dropped her purse and pulled out her phone. I looked up from my laptop, expecting news about a promotion or maybe plans with her sister. Instead, she thrust her screen toward me, showing Instagram messages from someone named Trevor Walsh. The name meant nothing to me, but Rachel's face was glowing like she'd won the lottery. Trevor from college, she explained, as if that clarified everything. Remember, I told you about him? We dated senior year before he moved to Silicon Valley. I vaguely remembered her mentioning some ex-boyfriend who'd chased tech dreams in California, but she'd never seemed particularly nostalgic about him. Now she was scrolling through his profile with the focus of someone studying for finals. The photos were impressive, I had to admit. Trevor posed next to a white Tesla in front of what looked like a glass office building, another shot of him giving a presentation to a packed conference room, and several images of a modern apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the San Francisco Bay. His bio read, CEO and founder, disrupting tech one innovation at a time. Look at this, Rachel continued, showing me his latest post about closing a Series B funding round. He's building this revolutionary platform for sustainable energy management. Says he's already got contracts with 3 Fortune 500 companies. I studied the images more carefully, noting the professional quality of the photos and the carefully crafted captions. As someone who works in cybersecurity, I've learned to be skeptical of things that seem too polished online. But Rachel was completely absorbed, reading his messages aloud. He says he's been thinking about how different things might have been if we'd stayed together after graduation. How we could have built an empire together instead of playing it safe. That phrase hit me like a physical blow. Playing it safe. I'd been working 60-hour weeks for the past 2 years, building expertise in threat detection and network security. I'd saved enough for a down payment on a house and had been secretly saving for an engagement ring that was currently hidden in my sock drawer. Apparently, stability and planning ahead qualified as playing it safe. What exactly is he suggesting? I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. Rachel sat down across from me, her expression suddenly serious. He wants to meet when he's in Phoenix next week. Says he has some business meetings here and thought we could catch up. She paused, chewing her lower lip the way she did when she was nervous. I've been thinking lately about whether I settled too quickly. Whether I chose security over ambition. The words hung in the air between us like smoke. 3 years together, and she was questioning the fundamental choice of being with me. I thought about all our weekend mornings making breakfast together, our evenings planning trips we'd take someday, the way she used to brag to her friends about having a boyfriend who actually knew how to fix things when they broke. You think you settled for me, I said. It wasn't a question. I think I might have. Her honesty was brutal but somehow refreshing. Look at what Trevor's accomplished in the same 4 years. He took risks, built something revolutionary. Meanwhile, we're here living in the same apartment, following the same routines, talking about maybe buying a house in the suburbs someday. I closed my laptop and really looked at her. The woman I'd been planning to propose to was sitting across from me, essentially asking for permission to explore whether she'd made a mistake choosing stability over excitement. The irony wasn't lost on me that she called my career boring when I spent my days protecting companies from sophisticated cyber attacks, but apparently preventing $1 million security breaches wasn't as impressive as whatever Trevor was selling on Instagram. So what are you asking me, Rachel? I guess I'm asking if you'd be okay with me meeting him, just to see what might have been. I could have fought for us. Could have pointed out that she was comparing our real, lived-in relationship to someone's carefully curated social media presence. Could have mentioned the engagement ring and my promotion opportunity and all the plans I'd been making for our future. Instead, I looked at her sitting there, practically vibrating with excitement about another man's supposed success, and realized something important. If she needed permission to explore other options, she'd already made her choice. Go for it, I said calmly. The surprise on her face told me she'd expected me to fight harder. I watched Rachel's confusion turn to relief as she processed my response, probably interpreting my calm acceptance as understanding rather than the quiet devastation it actually was. While she texted Trevor to confirm their meeting, I was already formulating a plan that had nothing to do with winning her back and everything to do with protecting myself from whatever game was being played. The next morning, I called Lisa Martinez, Rachel's former college roommate who now worked as a private investigator in Los Angeles. I'd met Lisa twice during visits, and she'd always struck me as someone who saw through people's facades with surgical precision. More importantly, she'd known Trevor during their college years and had never seemed impressed by him. "Kevin." Lisa sounded surprised when she answered. "Is everything okay with Rachel?" "That depends on how you define okay," I said, explaining the situation while walking to my car in the parking garage. "Trevor Walsh is back in the picture, and Rachel seems convinced he's become some kind of tech mogul." The silence on the other end stretched for several seconds. "Trevor Walsh," Lisa repeated slowly. "Tall guy, brown hair, always wore those expensive watches he couldn't afford?" "That sounds right. Why do you ask about the watches?" "Because that was Trevor's whole thing in college. He'd buy convincing knockoffs and let people assume they were real. I always wondered what happened to him after graduation." Lisa agreed to meet me that afternoon at a coffee shop in Scottsdale, claiming she had some information that might interest me. When I arrived, I found her at a corner table with a laptop open and several printed documents spread out. Lisa looked exactly as I remembered, professional and focused, but there was something different about the way she greeted me. More attention, more genuine interest than I'd ever noticed before. "I did some preliminary research after your call," she said, sliding a folder across the table. "Trevor's been busy, but not in the way he's advertising." The documents were fascinating and disturbing. Trevor's supposed Silicon Valley success was entirely fabricated. His office was a WeWork space he rented by the hour for photo shoots. The Tesla belonged to a car-sharing service, and his apartment photos were lifted from various luxury real estate listings. Most damaging of all, Lisa had discovered Trevor had been systematically contacting his college ex-girlfriends over the past 6 months, using identical scripts about business success and missed opportunities. "He's running some kind of con," Lisa explained, showing me screenshots from 3 different women who'd been approached with similar stories. "The question is what he's really after." I studied Lisa as she walked me through her findings, impressed by her thoroughness and analytical approach. She'd built a comprehensive timeline of Trevor's activities, cross-referenced his social media posts with actual business filings, and even verified that his supposed company didn't exist in any corporate database. "This level of investigation," I said, genuinely impressed. "How long did this take you?" "About 4 hours. Your call made me curious, and I hate seeing good people get manipulated." The way she said "good people" while looking directly at me sent an unexpected warmth through my chest. We spent another hour discussing Trevor's likely motivations and potential next moves. Lisa suggested we document everything carefully, both for Rachel's protection and in case Trevor's activities crossed into illegal territory. As we prepared to leave, Lisa casually snapped a photo of us at the table, mentioning she wanted to remember the productive meeting. "Mind if I post this? I like to share when I'm collaborating with cybersecurity professionals." I agreed, thinking nothing of it. 20 minutes later, my phone exploded with calls from Rachel. "Why are you meeting with Lisa behind my back?" she demanded when I finally answered. "What are you trying to prove? Are you having me investigated?" The paranoia in her voice was telling. Why would someone worry about being investigated unless they had something to hide? "Lisa's helping me understand Trevor's background," I said calmly. "Since you're considering whether you made a mistake choosing me, I thought it might be useful to know who you're comparing me to." "This is exactly what I mean about you being controlling," Rachel shot back. "You can't just accept that I might have feelings for someone else. You have to dig into his life and try to find dirt." I let her vent while mentally noting how quickly she'd jumped to defending a man she hadn't spoken to in 4 years. The Rachel I'd fallen in love with would have been curious about what I'd discovered, not angry that I'd looked into it. After she hung up, Lisa texted me, "That reaction tells us everything we need to know. She's already emotionally invested in Trevor's story." I realized Lisa was right, and I also realized that our 4-hour conversation had been the most intellectually stimulating discussion I'd had in months. Rachel had been increasingly dismissive of my work lately, treating my cybersecurity expertise as mundane technical stuff. Lisa understood the complexity of what I did and seemed genuinely interested in how digital investigation intersected with traditional private investigation work. When I got home that evening, Rachel was waiting with her arms crossed and a defiant expression that made it clear our relationship had crossed a line we couldn't uncross. 3 days later, I came home early from work to find Rachel sitting on our couch next to a man I immediately recognized from his Instagram photos, though he looked significantly less impressive in person. Trevor was wearing what appeared to be an expensive suit, but I noticed the frayed cuffs and the way he kept adjusting his sleeves to hide a cheap watch. His confident online persona had been replaced by nervous energy, and he kept glancing toward the door like he was planning an exit strategy. "Kevin, this is Trevor," Rachel said with forced brightness. "Trevor, this is Kevin. We live together." The awkward introduction told me everything about where her head was. I wasn't her boyfriend anymore. I was just someone she happened to share living space with. Trevor stood and offered his hand with practiced charm. "Great to finally meet you, man. Rachel's told me so much about your computer work." The dismissive way he said computer work reminded me why I'd never liked guys like him in college. I shook his hand and immediately noticed how soft his palms were, definitely not the hands of someone who'd been building a revolutionary company from the ground up. "Rachel says you're disrupting the tech industry," I said conversationally. "What specific sector are you focused on?" I watched Trevor's face carefully as he launched into a vague explanation about sustainable energy management solutions and blockchain-integrated smart grid optimization. As someone who actually worked in tech, I could tell he was stringing together buzzwords without understanding what they meant. When I asked about his development stack and scalability architecture, he deflected with jokes about getting too technical for a social conversation. Rachel jumped in to change the subject, but I'd already learned what I needed to know. During their visit, I excused myself to call Lisa with updates. She'd been tracking Trevor's movements since our meeting and had disturbing news. "He's been staying at 3 different budget motels in the past week," she reported, "paying cash and checking out whenever they ask for a credit card to keep on file." I also found court documents showing eviction proceedings from his last known address in San Jose. "What about his business?" I asked, watching through the window as Trevor and Rachel talked intensely on our balcony. "Kevin, there is no business. I contacted the supposed Fortune 500 clients he mentioned on Instagram. None of them have ever heard of him or his company. The whole thing is fabricated." When I returned to the living room, Trevor was showing Rachel paperwork for what he claimed was a major investment opportunity. I glimpsed enough to see official-looking documents with impressive letterheads and complex financial projections. As someone who'd been targeted by phishing attempts and social engineering scams, I recognized the hallmarks of professional-grade fraud materials. "Rachel, could I speak with you privately for a moment?" I asked. She followed me to the kitchen with obvious reluctance. "Lisa found some concerning information about Trevor's financial situation," I said quietly. "I think you should know he's been evicted from 3 apartments in the past year and there's no record of his company actually existing." Her face flushed with anger. "You're still investigating him? This is harassment, Kevin. You can't accept that he's successful while you're stuck in the same dead-end job you've had for years. It's not about success. It's about truth. His supposed clients don't exist, Rachel. I can show you the documentation." "I don't want to see your fake evidence," she snapped. "Trevor warned me you might try something like this. He said jealous men always attack successful rivals by spreading lies." The fact that Trevor had preemptively prepared her for my discoveries confirmed Lisa's theory about his methods. He'd done this before, probably with other women who had stable partners he needed to discredit. When we returned to the living room, Trevor was gone. Rachel explained he'd stepped out to take an important business call, but his nervous energy before leaving suggested he'd overheard enough of our conversation to realize his cover was blown. An hour later, Rachel's phone rang. Trevor's voice was loud enough for me to hear as he explained that his rental car had been temporarily repossessed due to a paperwork issue, and asked if Rachel could pick him up from a gas station across town. "What kind of successful CEO gets his rental car repossessed?" I asked after she hung up. "It's just a bureaucratic mistake," Rachel insisted, but I could see doubt creeping into her expression for the first time. While she drove to rescue Trevor, I called Lisa with an update. "He's rattled," I reported. Left as soon as he realized I was asking specific questions about his business. But fraudsters rely on keeping their marks isolated from people who might ask uncomfortable questions. The fact that he's already trying to turn Rachel against you means you're disrupting his timeline. That evening, Rachel returned with Trevor in tow, both of them looking defensive and slightly desperate. Trevor had abandoned his smooth charm and was now playing the victim, claiming I was harassing him because I couldn't handle Rachel's success. Some men can't stand to see their women with real entrepreneurs, he said, directing his comments to Rachel while avoiding eye contact with me. They'll do anything to sabotage genuine opportunities. I pulled out my laptop and showed them both the incorporation records Lisa had obtained. Trevor's supposed company didn't exist in California, Delaware, or any other state. His business address was a UPS store, and his phone number was registered to a burner phone service. There are explanations for all of this, Trevor insisted, but his voice lacked conviction. I use privacy services to protect my intellectual property. That's standard practice in Silicon Valley. Rachel looked between us, her certainty finally starting to crack. Trevor, maybe you should explain about the rental car situation. For the first time since I'd met him, Trevor's mask slipped completely. Look, I'm going through a temporary cash flow issue, okay? That's normal in startups. We're between funding rounds and I had to make some short-term sacrifices to keep the company running. What company? I asked quietly. The silence that followed answered everything. The next morning, I woke up to find Rachel's side of the bed empty and her overnight bag missing from the closet. She'd left a note saying she needed space to think and would be staying at her sister's for a few days. What she didn't mention was that she'd also taken Trevor with her, something I discovered when Lisa called with surveillance updates. They're at Ashley's place, Lisa reported. But here's the interesting part. Trevor's been posting Instagram stories about his Phoenix business meetings while he's actually sitting in a suburban apartment complex. That afternoon, my phone started buzzing with notifications. Rachel had launched a full social media campaign painting me as a jealous, controlling partner who'd sabotaged her chance at happiness with a successful entrepreneur. Her Facebook post had already garnered dozens of sympathetic comments from mutual friends who didn't know the full story. My boyfriend hired a private investigator to stalk and harass my friend because he can't handle that someone from my past became successful while he stayed stagnant, she'd written. Some men can't stand to see women with ambition or appreciate when they meet real entrepreneurs who think bigger than their next paycheck. The post was accompanied by one of Trevor's more impressive Instagram photos, the one with the Tesla and the office building. Within hours, the story had spread through our social circle with predictable results. Our mutual friends were taking sides, and most of them were choosing Rachel's version because it was more dramatic and she'd gotten there first with her narrative. I screenshot everything for documentation but didn't respond publicly. Instead, I focused on helping Lisa gather more evidence about Trevor's activities. What we discovered was far worse than simple social media fraud. Lisa had connected with Marcus Williams, a tech blogger who specialized in exposing startup scams and investment fraud. Marcus had been tracking Trevor for months after receiving tips from multiple victims who'd lost money to his various schemes. Trevor Walsh has been running sophisticated con games for at least 2 years, Marcus explained during a three-way call with Lisa and me. He targets successful women through dating apps and social media, builds fake romantic connections, then convinces them to invest in his non-existent companies. The scope of Trevor's operation was staggering. Marcus had identified at least 12 women who'd given Trevor money, ranging from small loans to major investments. One victim, a Seattle attorney named Jennifer, had transferred $45,000 to Trevor's account after he convinced her they were starting a legal tech startup together. Another woman in Austin had refinanced her house to give Trevor $80,000 for what he claimed was a revolutionary app development project. The Instagram profile Rachel saw is just his latest creation, Marcus continued. He builds these fake success stories specifically to target women who might be dissatisfied with their current relationships. He researches their partners' careers and positions himself as the more successful alternative. While Marcus worked on his expose article, Lisa was tracking Trevor's current activities. She discovered he was using Rachel's phone to take photos of financial documents and personal information belonging to me and her sister Ashley. The pattern was becoming clear. Trevor wasn't just running a romance scam, he was harvesting personal data for identity theft and financial fraud. Look at these timestamps. Lisa showed me surveillance footage from Ashley's apartment complex. Trevor's been photographing mail and packages when Rachel's not around. He's building profiles on everyone in her social circle. That evening, Marcus published his article, "The Fake CEO Targeting Your Ex-Girlfriend: How Social Media Romance Scams Exploit Relationship Insecurities." The piece went viral within hours, generating thousands of shares and dozens of additional victim testimonials in the comments. Trevor's carefully constructed Instagram presence collapsed as people began reporting his posts for fraud and sharing Marcus's investigation. Rachel called me that night, furious and defensive. "Your blogger friend is spreading lies about Trevor online," she accused. "He's getting death threats because of this article. You've destroyed an innocent man's reputation." "Rachel, I have bank records showing Trevor took money from 12 different women using the exact same lies he told you. This isn't about us anymore. This is about protecting people from a career criminal." "Those women are probably lying for attention," she insisted. Trevor explained how competitors spread false stories about successful entrepreneurs. "It's called corporate espionage." The fact that she was still defending him after everything we'd uncovered told me how completely Trevor had manipulated her thinking. But the next morning brought developments that even Rachel couldn't rationalize away. Marcus's article had prompted an FBI investigation into Trevor's activities, and federal agents had traced multiple fraudulent loan applications to addresses where Trevor had been staying. When agents arrived at Ashley's apartment with a search warrant, they found Trevor's laptop containing hundreds of stolen financial documents, fake business presentations, and detailed profiles of potential victims across multiple states. Rachel was at work when the arrest happened, but Ashley called her immediately. "Rachel, you need to come home right now," Ashley said in a voicemail I later heard. "Trevor's been arrested by federal agents. They found stolen identities and fake documents in his backpack. What the hell did you bring into my house?" That afternoon, local news stations picked up the story. Trevor's mugshot appeared on television alongside headlines about romance scammer targeting Phoenix women. The contrast between his confident Instagram photos and his defeated expression in custody was striking enough that the story gained national attention as an example of social media manipulation and romance fraud. Marcus called me with updates throughout the day. Trevor's been charged with wire fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy to commit financial crimes across state lines. The FBI found evidence connecting him to romance scams in 6 different states over the past 3 years. When Rachel finally came home that evening, she looked like someone who'd aged 5 years in one day. The confident woman who'd been defending Trevor's honor just hours earlier had been replaced by someone who clearly understood she'd been played by a professional manipulator. "I need to know everything," she said quietly, sitting across from me at our kitchen table. "I need to know how stupid I've been." Over the next several hours, I walked Rachel through everything Lisa and I had discovered about Trevor's operation, from the fake business documents to the systematic targeting of his college ex-girlfriends. She listened in stunned silence as I explained how he'd been using her phone to photograph our personal documents and had likely been planning to use our information for identity theft and loan fraud. The worst revelation came when I showed her security camera footage from our apartment complex that Lisa had obtained through her investigation. "This is from last Tuesday when we were both at work," I said, pulling up the video on my laptop. The footage clearly showed Trevor using a copied key to enter our apartment, spending over an hour photographing documents from my home office, including tax returns, bank statements, and client confidentiality agreements from my cybersecurity work. "He made copies of your house key?" Rachel asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "When?" "Probably during his first visit. It's a standard technique for professional fraudsters. They gain access to personal spaces to gather information for identity theft and financial crimes." I showed her additional footage of Trevor accessing our mailbox and photographing the contents, including pre-approved credit card offers and bank statements that could be used to open fraudulent accounts. The systematic nature of his data collection was chilling, especially knowing he'd been doing this while pretending to reconnect romantically with Rachel. Lisa traced some of the documents Trevor photographed to loan applications he filed using variations of my identity, I continued. He applied for business credit cards using my social security number and employment information. The FBI found copies of my tax returns in his possession when they arrested him. Rachel stared at the security footage, watching Trevor methodically rifle through our private documents with practiced efficiency. I gave him my phone password, she admitted quietly. He said he needed to check something about his flight back to California. He must have been copying our contact information and photographing our conversations. The scope of Trevor's betrayal was becoming clear. He hadn't just been targeting Rachel for romance fraud, he'd been using their relationship to gain access to a broader network of potential victims and identity theft opportunities. Lisa's investigation had revealed that Trevor had been building detailed profiles on Rachel's entire social circle, including her sister Ashley, her co-workers, and several of our mutual friends. Ashley's been getting strange calls, Rachel said suddenly. Credit card companies asking about applications she never filed. Trevor was in her apartment for 3 days. He had access to all her personal information too. The federal investigation was uncovering the full extent of Trevor's criminal enterprise. FBI agents had found evidence that he'd been using stolen identities to create fake business entities and apply for government grants meant for minority-owned startups. His laptop contained over 200 stolen identity profiles, fake business presentations for non-existent companies, and detailed plans for targeting specific demographics through social media manipulation. The agents said he was part of a larger network, Rachel reported after speaking with investigators. They think he was feeding stolen information to other criminals who specialized in different types of fraud. It wasn't just romance scams. It was a sophisticated operation. Marcus Williams published a follow-up article detailing the criminal network Trevor had been connected to, including connections to overseas cybercriminal organizations that specialized in identity theft and financial fraud. The story revealed that Trevor's fake CEO persona had been just one part of a larger scheme to infiltrate professional networks and harvest personal information for criminal purposes. Trevor's arrest has led to investigations in multiple states, Marcus explained during another call with Lisa and me. The FBI believes his network may have stolen identities from hundreds of people over the past 3 years. Your girlfriend inadvertently helped investigators identify patterns they've been tracking across different jurisdictions. The personal cost of Rachel's involvement became apparent when she was called in for additional FBI interviews. Agents needed to understand how Trevor had gained access to our personal information and whether Rachel had knowingly participated in any of his criminal activities. The investigation revealed that Trevor had been using Rachel's social media accounts to research potential victims and had accessed her email to gather information about her professional contacts. They asked me if I knew Trevor was photographing documents, Rachel told me after her second FBI interview. They showed me pictures he'd taken of confidential files from your work. Kevin, he photographed everything in your home office. Client contracts, security protocols, network diagrams. They think he was planning to sell corporate information to competitors or use it for ransomware attacks. The realization that Trevor had potentially compromised my client's cybersecurity through Rachel's unwitting assistance was devastating. I immediately notified my employer and began working with our security team to assess potential data breaches and notify affected clients. The investigation revealed that Trevor had been specifically targeting cybersecurity professionals because their access to sensitive corporate information made them valuable sources for criminal networks. Your ex-boyfriend wasn't just running romance scams, my boss explained during an emergency security briefing. He was conducting corporate espionage. The information he photographed from your home office could have been used to target our clients with sophisticated cyber attacks. Rachel broke down completely when she realized the full scope of what she'd enabled. I thought you were jealous, she sobbed. I thought you couldn't handle that he was more successful than you. I defended him while he was stealing from us and planning to destroy your career. The woman who'd been questioning our relationship just weeks earlier was now faced with the reality that her judgment had nearly destroyed both of our lives. But the damage was already done. Even though Rachel hadn't knowingly participated in Trevor's crimes, her social media posts defending him and attacking me had become evidence in the federal case, demonstrating how romance fraudsters manipulate their victims into isolating themselves from people who might recognize the deception. 2 weeks after Trevor's arrest, I was called into an emergency meeting with my company's executive team and legal counsel. Rachel had been desperately trying to repair our relationship, bringing me coffee every morning and apologizing constantly for her role in the security breach, but the professional consequences of her actions were just beginning. Kevin, we need to discuss the potential impact of your personal situation on our client relationships, my boss Sarah Chen explained, her expression serious. Several clients are concerned about the security of their information after learning about the data breach. I'd already provided a complete timeline of events and cooperated fully with both the FBI investigation and our internal security audit. The audit had cleared me of any wrongdoing and confirmed that I'd followed all company protocols for handling sensitive information. However, the fact remained that confidential client data had been photographed in my home office by a criminal who'd gained access through my personal relationship. We've reviewed everything with legal and cybersecurity consultants, Sarah continued. You're not at fault for what happened, but we need to address client concerns about information security. Some are requesting that their accounts be transferred to other analysts. The irony was brutal. My career in cybersecurity, built on protecting organizations from exactly these kinds of threats, was being damaged by a security breach that had occurred in my own home through my girlfriend's relationship with a criminal. 3 of my major clients had already requested account transfers, representing nearly 40% of my annual commission income. Meanwhile, Rachel was facing her own professional crisis. Her employer, a mid-sized marketing agency, had conducted their own investigation after learning about the FBI case. They discovered that Rachel had been photographing confidential client materials and sharing them with Trevor, believing she was helping him understand marketing industry trends for his supposed business ventures. They fired me yesterday, Rachel confided during one of our increasingly tense conversations. HR said I violated multiple confidentiality agreements and potentially exposed client trade secrets to corporate espionage. They're considering legal action to recover damages. The marketing materials Rachel had shared with Trevor included campaign strategies, client contact lists, and competitive analysis reports that could have been valuable to the criminal network Trevor was connected to. Her employer was now facing potential lawsuits from clients who'd had their proprietary information compromised through Rachel's actions. Kevin, I know this is all my fault, Rachel said, sitting on our couch where Trevor had first shown her his fake investment documents. I know I ruined everything. But maybe we can rebuild from this. Maybe this experience taught us something about trust and communication. I looked at her, this woman who'd spent weeks questioning whether she'd settled for me, who defended a criminal while attacking my credibility, who'd unknowingly participated in crimes that had damaged both of our careers. The engagement ring was still hidden in my sock drawer, but the person I'd planned to propose to no longer existed. Rachel, you didn't just make a mistake, I said carefully. You made a series of choices that showed me exactly how you see me and our relationship. When Trevor appeared with his fake success story, you immediately decided I wasn't good enough. I was confused, she protested. He manipulated me into thinking things I didn't really believe. You believed them because part of you wanted them to be true. You wanted to believe that I was holding you back, that you deserved something more exciting than what we had built together. The conversation revealed something that went deeper than Trevor's manipulation. Rachel had been fundamentally dissatisfied with our relationship long before Trevor arrived, viewing my stability and planning as limitations rather than strengths. Trevor had simply provided her with permission to express feelings she'd been harboring for months. A week later, the situation took another devastating turn when federal prosecutors informed us that Rachel's social media posts and the confidential documents Trevor had photographed through her access would be used as evidence in his criminal trial. Ms. Henderson, while you weren't charged with any crimes, your actions significantly aided Mr. Walsh's criminal enterprise, the federal prosecutor explained during a briefing. Your social media campaign against Mr. Stevens provided cover for Mr. Walsh's activities and discredited the one person who was actively investigating his fraud. Rachel's face went white as the prosecutor continued. Mr. Walsh specifically instructed his criminal associates to monitor Mr. Stevens' cybersecurity work because the information he photographed from his home office could be used to target corporate networks. Your relationship provided access to classified information about network vulnerabilities and client security protocols. The full scope of the damage became clear when my employer's forensic audit revealed that Trevor had photographed detailed network diagrams and security protocols that could have enabled sophisticated cyber attacks against our clients. The FBI investigation found evidence that this information had been shared with overseas criminal organizations that specialized in corporate ransomware attacks. We're recommending that all affected clients implement comprehensive security audits and update their network protocols," the FBI cybercrime specialist explained. "The information Mr. Walsh obtained could potentially be used for attacks months or years from now." 3 more of my clients terminated their contracts that week, citing concerns about ongoing security risks. My employer, while supportive throughout the investigation, was forced to reassign me to lower-profile accounts that didn't involve access to sensitive corporate networks. My career trajectory, carefully built over 5 years, had been derailed by a criminal who'd gained access to my professional life through my personal relationship. Meanwhile, Lisa's investigation had uncovered additional evidence of Trevor's network that was helping federal prosecutors build cases against his criminal associates. The information Kevin provided about Trevor's initial approach to Rachel helped us identify patterns across multiple states, she reported during one of our regular debriefings. FBI agents are now investigating similar cases in Texas, Colorado, and Oregon where romance scammers used identical methods to infiltrate professional networks. What had started as a simple investigation into my girlfriend's ex-boyfriend had uncovered a sophisticated criminal enterprise that used romance fraud as a cover for corporate espionage and identity theft. The case was becoming a landmark investigation that would change how federal agencies approached cybercrime networks that targeted personal relationships to gain access to professional information. 8 months later, I was standing in the conference room of Phoenix Cybersecurity Solutions, the consulting firm Lisa and I had launched together after both of our lives had been turned upside down by Trevor's criminal network. Our company specialized in helping fraud victims recover their stolen assets and assisting organizations in implementing security protocols to prevent romance-based corporate espionage. The irony wasn't lost on me that being victimized by a sophisticated criminal had ultimately led to the most fulfilling work of my career. "The Morrison Industries case is complete," Lisa announced to our team of 6 investigators and cybersecurity specialists. "We recovered $280,000 in stolen funds and helped them identify the security vulnerabilities that enabled the initial breach. Our success rate was impressive because we understood both the technical and psychological aspects of these crimes. I brought expertise in network security and digital forensics, while Lisa contributed her investigative skills and deep understanding of social manipulation tactics. Together, we developed innovative approaches to tracking cybercriminals who used personal relationships to infiltrate corporate networks. The demand for our services had grown rapidly as more organizations realized how vulnerable they were to romance-based espionage. We'd consulted with companies across 12 states, helping them implement policies that protected employees' personal information while maintaining appropriate work-life boundaries. My career had not only recovered from the Trevor incident but had expanded into something more meaningful and lucrative than my previous corporate position. "Kevin, the FBI wants us to present at their National Cybercrime Conference next month," Lisa said, reviewing our latest case files. "They want us to share our methodology for identifying romance fraud networks that target professional information." Our professional partnership had evolved into something much deeper over the past few months. Lisa understood the technical complexity of my work in ways Rachel never had, and I appreciated her analytical approach to human behavior and criminal psychology. We'd started dating officially 3 months ago, though we'd been building toward it since the day we first met to discuss Trevor's activities. The contrast with my previous relationship was striking. Where Rachel had viewed my cybersecurity expertise as mundane technical work, Lisa found it fascinating and regularly incorporated my insights into her investigations. Where Rachel had been dismissive of my methodical approach to planning, Lisa appreciated the strategic thinking that went into building comprehensive security protocols. The Denver victim recovery case netted another $150,000, I reported, reviewing our quarterly results. That brings our total recovered assets to over $2.8 million this year. Our success wasn't just measured in financial recovery. We'd helped 43 fraud victims understand how they'd been targeted and manipulated, providing them with resources for both financial and emotional recovery. Many of our clients had become advocates who helped other victims recognize similar scams. Meanwhile, Trevor's criminal trial had concluded with a conviction on multiple federal charges. He'd been sentenced to 5 years in federal prison after pleading guilty to wire fraud, identity theft, conspiracy to commit cybercrime, and violations of the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. The evidence Rachel's inadvertent cooperation had provided was crucial to securing convictions against 3 members of his criminal network. Marcus Williams wants to interview us for his new book about corporate espionage, Lisa mentioned, referring to the tech journalist whose initial investigation had exposed Trevor's fraud network. He says our case study about romance fraud targeting cybersecurity professionals is becoming required reading at FBI training programs. Rachel's life had taken a dramatically different trajectory. After being fired from her marketing position, she'd struggled to find equivalent work due to the confidentiality violations on her record. She'd eventually taken a retail job at a department store in Tempe, working for hourly wages that barely covered her basic expenses. Her sister Ashley had asked her to move out after learning about the identity theft attempts that had originated from Trevor's access to her apartment, leaving Rachel to find a small studio apartment she could barely afford. The civil lawsuits from Trevor's fraud victims had been more devastating than his criminal conviction. Rachel was named as a defendant in multiple cases because her social media posts had provided credibility to Trevor's fake business persona, helping him defraud additional victims after his Phoenix visit. While courts ultimately determined she'd been manipulated rather than complicit, the legal fees and settlements had consumed her savings and damaged her credit rating. She applied for a job here last month, Lisa told me one evening as we reviewed applications for a new administrative position. HR forwarded her resume with a note about the connection to our founding case. I read through Rachel's application materials, noting how she tried to position her experience with Trevor's fraud network as relevant qualifications for helping other victims. The irony was that she'd learned valuable lessons about manipulation and deception, but those lessons had come at the cost of enabling crimes against dozens of innocent people. What do you think? Lisa asked, though her expression suggested she already knew my answer. I think she needs to rebuild her life somewhere that isn't connected to the damage she helped cause, I replied. She's not a criminal, but she's also not someone I trust to work with vulnerable fraud victims. 6 months later, Lisa and I announced our engagement at the annual Phoenix Business Security Conference, where we were keynote speakers discussing the intersection of personal relationships and corporate cybersecurity. The engagement ring I'd originally bought for Rachel had long since been returned, replaced by something chosen specifically for Lisa that reflected our shared interests and values. Building security isn't just about technology, I told the audience of cybersecurity professionals and law enforcement officials. It's about understanding how criminals exploit human vulnerabilities to gain access to technical systems. Personal relationships are increasingly becoming attack vectors for sophisticated fraud networks. Our presentation concluded with case studies showing how romance fraud had evolved from simple financial scams into sophisticated operations targeting corporate networks and professional information. The Trevor case had become a textbook example of how criminals use intimate relationships to bypass traditional security measures. After the conference, Lisa and I drove to the same coffee shop in Scottsdale where we'd first met to investigate Trevor's background. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if Rachel hadn't fallen for Trevor's con? Lisa asked, sipping the same latte she'd ordered during our first meeting. I think about it sometimes, I admitted. But honestly, Trevor just revealed problems that already existed. Rachel was looking for reasons to be dissatisfied with what we'd built together. If it hadn't been Trevor, it would have been someone else eventually. Our success had proven that sometimes the worst betrayals lead to the best outcomes, not because the betrayal was deserved, but because surviving it reveals strengths and possibilities that might never have been discovered otherwise. Rachel had seen my stability and planning as limitations that held her back from something more exciting. Lisa saw those same qualities as strengths that enabled us to build something meaningful together. The difference wasn't in who I was, but in who was looking.